Amazingly, this fox acted when a snake threatened a youngster. A large number of individuals believe foxes are dangerous pests that need to be exterminated for the sake of human and animal safety. But one of these lovable critters altered the course of a little boy's life forever. Dylan was just a regular guy from a sleepy little rural hamlet in the USA. He spent his childhood on the farm his father ran. Dylan's father spent his whole life teaching his son about farming. Dylan was given the tools he would need to become a successful farmer. In spite of his father's best efforts, the young man continued to have hopes of attending university and landing a well-paying career. When Dylan was old sufficiently, he packed his bags and left the property in the hamlet to attend law school in the nearest metropolis. Tragically, Dylan's father died suddenly while he was abroad, leaving Dylan the family farm and all of the land. Dylan was crushed by the news of his father's death, and while he completed his education, he returned to the little town where he had spent his childhood. The young guy was searching for whatever means possible to strengthen his bond with his father. He thus engaged in farming, a profession he had been introduced to by his father at an early age. Dylan was a dedicated worker who took great pride in tending to his farm. He eventually met a young lady named Julia, and the two hit it off instantly due to their shared appreciation for farming. They quickly became engaged, married, and expecting a child. With the passage of time, Dylan and Julia continued to cheerfully work on Dylan's farm, where a man was educating his son Ethan all he knew about farming. In addition, he enjoyed strolling through the adjacent woods with his father. The two would happily walk around the forest for hours, just taking in the sights and sounds of the forest and each other. Dylan, at 9 years old, remembers asking his dad if he might help plow a field. Dylan said no, explaining to the kid that it was very hot outside and that he should remain in the air conditioning. Neither Dylan nor his kid had any idea what was about to happen that day as they both went off to work. The next time Dylan was plowing one of his farms with his tractors, he saw something odd laying in the route of his massive machine. The young farmer had to stop the tractor to have a better look at the strange item, and he had no idea what it was. The closer Dylan approached, however, the clearer it became that the creature was a fox, and a young one at that. But instead of rising and fleeing as he had anticipated, the animal just stood there. After a while, the farmer saw that the fox remained hurt and starving. It seems the baby animal was abandoned, with no mother in sight. Right away, Dylan felt bad for the animal, knowing that its mom had probably been killed by a different farmer who considered it a nuisance. Dylan, unable to abandon the defenseless fox, picked it up and carried it back to his house. For the time being, the farmer has provided the fox with food and water in the garage, since he is unsure of the animal's reaction to his wife and kid. Once Dylan was sure the fox cub would be well, he went back to plowing his field. When Dylan got back to his house late that evening, he went straight to investigate on the baby fox he discovered. The farmer came home to find that the creature had consumed the food and drink he had left, and was now curled up in a corner of the garage. Dylan decided to put the fox through a series of tests to determine its temperament and determine whether or not it would be safe for the family to introduce it to the other members of the household, knowing that perhaps the animal would not survive on its own, but not wishing it to harm them. After 2 days, Dylan had faith that the male fox wouldn't hurt his family whenever the guy entered the garage. When it saw him, the animal would jump up and down with joy. Dylan then presented the fox in front of Ethan and Julia, who were both delighted by the prospect of their son having such an unique companion. In contrast, Julia's anxiety levels were higher. She was afraid her kid would be harmed, and she was concerned that the fox may bite him. Following a few days and much encouragement from Dylan, Julia accepted the fox as a member of the family and even became fond of the odd pet. When Dylan's fox, which Ethan had called Socks, had fully recovered, he considered releasing it back into the adjacent woods. The animal was a wild animal, and he had no doubt that it belonged in the forest. Dylan couldn't stomach the notion of separating his kid from his closest buddy, and so Ethan and his Socks did everything together, from roaming in the yard to having a meal. As the fox matured, though, he developed a more feral and self-reliant personality. Since he started hunting the rats and mice around the property, he no longer required Dylan to supply his food for him. The teenage pet also started spending increasingly more time out of the house. Dylan became more distraught as he saw his friend's withdrawal into isolation. He begged his dad to keep the fox around. To counteract this, Dylan just explained to his kid that Socks was indeed a wild creature who lived in the forest among his own kind, and that it was okay that the animal wished to go because he would be more happy with a clan of his own. Socks were finally free to leave, and Ethan was ready to go on with his life. One day he took the fox for a stroll towards the border of the forest. Before asking the animal to go look for his relatives in the woods, he said farewell and swore to always remember him. After giving the boy's hand a little lick, the fox trotted off into the woods. Every day for the first 2 months, Ethan went back to the woods, expecting to see his buddy again. Ethan checked less often as time went on, eventually admitting that he had lost a pair of socks. Dylan tried to console his kid and even offered to purchase him a dog, but Ethan realized that nothing would replace the small fox he had considered his greatest friend. Ethan was out in the front yard with his new dog a few weeks after he'd said goodbye to the fox. While Julia was finishing up the meal preparations, Dylan went up on the roof repairing the leak. It was a quiet day, with just the birds singing and sometimes laughing. There was silence until a piercing scream shattered the stillness. Once Dylan realized the scream was originating from Ethan, he leaped to his feet and raced down the roof's ladder. Ethan, meantime, was standing in the front yard, freezing to the bone. A deadly snake was just a few meters away from him, and it looked quite agitated. When the reptile turned to gaze at Ethan, the new dog started barking at it, but then scurried away in terror. The fear of the snake's possible assault kept him paralyzed. Even as the snake-like creature slithered closer, he closed his eyes in anticipation of a painful bite. Suddenly, he heard a low rumble, followed by a series of yelps. Everything he saw when he first opened his eyes shocked him. Socks were in front of him, and the dead snake was at the animal's feet. The fox undoubtedly heard Ethan cry out for assistance and came to his aid. Dylan came running around outside the side of the house at that time and saw his kid reuniting with an old buddy, both of them beaming broadly. For hours, Ethan and the man in the fox reminisced about their happier times together before the fox licking Ethan's palm and walking away. This time, though, Ethan wasn't unhappy to just see his old buddy doing well in life. Rather, he was pleased. The last moment before the fox ran out into the woods, Ethan saw a litter of fox kits and realized that Socks would have been safe with them. Give me your feedback in the section below. In addition, please click the like and subscribe buttons so that I can bring you even more fantastic stories.